Okay, this should, okay, so ignore all of that stuff that I look totally stupid in. I could restart this, but I've got the recording working, and so I'm going to keep going. So it's Saturday morning. I just sent you an announcement a little bit ago. I actually put on my Race for the Cure t-shirt, so it wasn't my turquoise one. I've got on my glasses I hang out with when I don't want to feel dressed up. And I'm noticing over in the corner, uh, you are seeing Mr. Dinosaur. This was from a couple of weeks ago when we took Sutton and Ryder for the day. Oh, I'm turning so he's not in the picture. And we saw Paddington Bear, and then they did Build-A-Bear, and as we're walking out, there's these balloons. And of course, we've spent how much money on the movie and the Build-A-Bear, and they wanted these balloons. So we took Ryder home, and then we took Sutton home, and Sutton, who is 3, a little bit of a wild man, was swinging this and flinging it. And, he's got a little sister that's 10 months old, 11 months old. And finally, when Scott and I left, I said that the dinosaur needed to come home with us because Allison was home alone with 4 kids. And I thought the kid is going to be crazy with that. So I moved it so it's not in the background. This is my last podcast that goes with our forums. And this is chapter 10 from the Survival Guide book, and it really is taking care of yourself. It's really about pulling it all together, but every other chapter we focused on everybody else in the process. This chapter really focuses on what you need to do or can do to help yourself be successful. So there are 5 categories. If you look at your handout across the top, find a support system, focus on feeling centered, find ways to relieve stress, don't own all the problems, and have hope. And I think that, we maybe underestimate these things, but I will tell you, there were times people said to me, I don't know how you keep going. I don't know how you do the pace you do. You're always so upbeat. You're always so organized. You're prepared. Our meetings are so meaningful. I mean, it was really a positive feedback. And I didn't think about it at the time, but as years ago when I was preparing this chapter, it really is about these things. So finding a support system. Talks about other literacy coaches outside the school. Get a more objective perspective. Information is more confidential. Avoid being seen as having favorites and discuss issues in other schools. So in my role, I was the only one in my district. But at that time, I went to Johnston. Terry Anselm was there. And Molly Boyle, I think is her name, was in Waukee. And Urbandale. I can't think of her name right now. I can see her. And an elementary principal in Adele and myself, the 5 of us, we would get together about once every 5 to 6 weeks and meet for lunch somewhere in a central location. And we would really talk through our issues and what we were learning. And if we found great professional materials, and really did a lot of sharing back and forth. That became my support group. And I think what they're saying is you just need to be careful. Now, I did have a friend in the district, Linda Phipps, who had come to the district and done the literacy role for 1 year and just really did not like it and went back to the classroom. She and I were close personal friends. I'd had both her daughters in school, and she and I, she was one person that I could meet with. I'd go to her house, so we weren't like visible at school, and we just would kind of process and debrief. And because she'd been in that role, she really understood. And sometimes she would give suggestions or ask questions, and sometimes I just needed to vent, and I knew I could trust her. And so that is so important, that you have that support. But you don't want it to be publicly people you're working with, because it really does appear that you have favorites, and that's deadly. Focus on feeling centered, breathing techniques, yoga, prayer. I'm not a yoga person, even though I'm sitting here in comfy yoga pants right now. My faith is very important to me, and so prayer became a part of what I did, and just really feeling centered, and that you can take care of yourself. Finding ways to relieve stress. Reading articles, exercise, rest, support system, eating healthy, positive attitude. And for me, a lot of times it was just reading junky books. I mean, little low rent mysteries, or, a romance, or, just any kind of a book where I could just kind of forget about things and just enjoy that time. Definitely. And when the weather was nice, I loved being outside, excuse me, walking. I'd like to say eating healthy was a good one for me, but sometimes I relieve stress by heading for the chocolate, which was not the best thing to do. So discourage you from doing that one. Don't own all the problems. And this was probably the hardest one for me. You have no control over all the issues. It talks about hungry students, teachers work too many hours, parents lose their jobs, school debt, evaluate how to take on responsibility. All of those things are just talking about there are many things that go on in our life as educators that we have no control over. And what we have to do is try to make a difference and do the things that we can control and the things that we can't, to let go of them. That was hard for me. I'm a fixer, and I wanted to fix everything, and it wasn't going to work that way. So that was a hard one for me. And then have hope. What is it worth? And focus on the students. In other words, it's kind of like, the story you've all heard about the person who's walking along the beach and throwing starfish, into the water, and someone says, like, okay, I'm looking at hundreds, thousands of starfish, and you're throwing one at a time. The response is, but for that one, it made a difference. And sometimes that's what I had to do. For that teacher, I moved them forward. It made a difference. Or for that group of students, we found something that worked. And so just really knowing that you can have hope. At the bottom, the conclusion just goes through: remember to breathe, have hope, see the good, and take care of yourself. And, that kind of sums it up. So what I would say, just kind of in closing, is that my 5 years in this role of leadership was some of the most rewarding. And yet what I realized is I couldn't do it all. And that was very humbling for me to accept. Probably, and I think I might have mentioned this before, one of my biggest compliments is a teacher. She was a kindergarten teacher. She's retired now. And she kind of had a reputation for being difficult in group settings and building consensus and stuff. And we were on break one day during the kindergarten training, and she came up to me, and I knew her personally, but she came up to me and she said, I just don't know how you do it, because you kind of bring something up and I am totally against it. And by the time we're done discussing it, I'm not only for it, but I kind of think part of it was my idea. She said, you just have that uncanny ability to just bring people along, don't offend people, but yet encourage people. And I've never forgotten that. In fact, she subs in my building sometimes now, and I smile when I see her, because that is the sign of a good leader, that you can bring people along, that you can get those ideas out there. I know another thing, and I think I probably mentioned this in the last class, but I'll say again, one of the other things that I did, I think was most helpful, is creating that chart that we called the parking lot. So when I was meeting with teachers, and I had I had a copy with me. So even if I went in to a building or individually, and there are things that needed to go in that parking lot, because sometimes someone would bring something up that really the whole group would be good for the whole group. So I always kept that on going. And I think what that did is communicated to teachers, I value what you're saying, I understand the importance, and I haven't forgotten it or ignored it. And I think that was really critical. So regardless of what you do, I think all the things we've talked about in surviving are things that within your own classroom, in your teaching world, you can use. You do work with individual teachers. You do work with your PLC. You do have difficult people you're around. Just lots of those things. So I hope you'll take it and embrace it and make it a part of who you are as an educator. Good luck. And again, I apologize at the beginning when I'm fumbling around trying to get the sound to work. I just didn't want to stop and start over again. So thank you.